Nintendo finally has some competition. Phew, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Nintendo and they're my favorite gaming company. I've been a Nintendo guy ever since I got into video games. I even had a Wii U. But man, Nintendo, and any company for that matter, who does too much time at the top starts to get arrogant, and also isn't as interested in being consumer friendly. Now, even though my knee-jerk reaction to the deck was, oh, they just copied the Nintendo Switch, at a more realistic view this is great. And besides, even if they did copy Nintendo's idea, they wouldn't be the first in the video games industry to do so. No, what I'm interested in is if the Steam Deck will be a Nintendo Switch killer or a flop. Some say yes, some say no. But I think we can find a pretty informed prediction of what the Steam Deck means for the Switch's future by looking at a few case studies from the past and the present. Look at these two consoles side by side. Now look at these. Or these. Same concept, right? Nintendo makes a handheld with a pretty revolutionary idea, and the competition makes a bigger, beefier console to challenge Nintendo's console in the ring, albeit to different degrees of success. Now, even though Nintendo has remained on top of the portable gaming market for practically all its lifetime, there have been some major contenders to challenge their dominance. First, in the Game Boy era, Atari and Sega tossed their hat into the ring with the Lynx and Game Gear respectively. And the fact that most of the people watching this video know what a Game Boy is, but not a Game Gear and less so the Lynx, already gives an indication of who won this console war. Sure, Nintendo's competition had the graphics, the color, the backlight, but they didn't have two things, arguably the most important two aspects, the affordable price and the great battery life. And although the Switch's battery life isn't anything to brag about, this brings me to my first point. Nintendo makes relatively cheap consoles. Now, some might think that the price doesn't make much of a difference nowadays. I mean, we see that with the Xbox and the PlayStation, where people are ready to pay much more than the average Joe or Josephine would have 25 years ago. But may I divert your attention to a different sector of gaming to disprove this point? Look at the virtual reality sector of gaming, and tell me who is currently on top. Is it Valve's own Index, which undoubtedly has the top specs in the market but is an unrealistic expense for most? Or is it the affordable and relatively underpowered Oculus Quest? The sales figures speak for themselves. No, I understand that the price leap from the Quest to the Index is much larger than of the Switch to the Deck, but then again, it goes to show that better specs does not always justify the price jump for consumers, even nowadays. Anyway, where were we? Right, the Nintendo competitor timeline. Now, for the Game Boy Color and Game Boy Advance, Nintendo didn't really have any competition, but in the next generation things would change, as Sony would try to topple Nintendo's monopoly.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the latest addition to the PlayStation family.
If anyone could do it, it was them. I mean, they had already stolen the home console crown from Nintendo, so how hard could it be to do it again in the handheld market? And so, the PlayStation Portable was created. Now Sony, like Nintendo's prior competitors, had much more powerful hardware. Although Sony didn't win the console war, they did truly challenge Nintendo's dominance over the handheld market, with 80 million units sold, but it was still a fair bit away from the 150 million units the Nintendo DS sold. Why is this? The issue of price pops up again, but the fact that the DS appealed to non-gamers also helped a lot. And we see this with the Switch nowadays. In an era where local multiplayer has gone out of fashion, we see Nintendo implement a controller setup which allows for local multiplayer wherever you are with the Joy-Cons, whereas the deck is, in my opinion, trying to occupy the hardcore gaming vacuum left by the absence of Nintendo's competitors. This would give Valve its own chance to shine whilst not stepping on Nintendo's toes. Now, you've probably noticed that I have skipped over one big key selling point that traditionally safeguarded Nintendo: their games. Yes, Nintendo has good games, obviously, but so does Valve. Who knows? Maybe Valve finally earns the number 3 once the deck comes out, and they develop the long-awaited sequels to all their famous IPs. While Sony failed to deliver on the games with the PlayStation Vita, which led to its fall, I doubt Valve will have the same problem. I mean, sure, Nintendo will always have Mario, Zelda, and so many more IPs, but Valve has the major AAA games on their hands, and their IPs like Portal and Team Fortress, and Artifact. Oh, sorry, I stuttered. But my point is, Valve has big franchises too, for a different market, sure, but they are still some of the most recognizable ones regardless. So, even though this video will age like me, will the Steam Deck be a Nintendo Switch killer? I don't think so, for the reason that I see three possible scenarios. A. Valve screws up like they did with the Steam machines and Nintendo remains a bully. B. Valve and Nintendo's consoles will exist side by side. C. Valve offers non-detrimental competition to the Switch and Nintendo reforms. I do think the second scenario is the most likely, but the third option is best for consumers. I hope you enjoyed this video. It's a new kind of video and I might make more commentary. Subscribe please.